Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. Coming out of the blocks with a jam-packed, fast-paced, unapologetic, and unedited hour plus of sports talk. Always with more substance than style, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, even as early as this past Thursday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And as we just about put the lid on week one, where we have a Monday night game tonight, where the Vikings will visit the Bears, J.J. McCarthy versus Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson in his first ever game as head coach of the Chicago Bears. So we'll see how that unfolds on ESPN, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman tonight. But there are 30 fan bases, 15 on the plus side, 15 on the minus side. Where on the plus side, everybody has visions of Super Bowls dancing in their head, or at least getting to a Super Bowl, which we all know is in Santa Clara, Levi Stadium there in the early part of February. But then there's 15 other fan bases that are thinking at 0-1 how the sky's falling, we're not even going to make the playoffs, it's already a long season, and forget about it, I don't even want to watch football. Of course, that is also a farce, but in all seriousness, when we think about what had transpired here over the last few days with the NFL, and I'd be remiss to not begin as to what happened there last night up in Buffalo, because by far, you could even argue that was the 15th game of the year, and that probably will end up being the game of the year, which is quite odd because throughout the course of an NFL season, especially over the last few seasons, you haven't had that standout game. You haven't had that memorable game. You want to talk about maybe Chiefs-Bills along the way a couple of times, or maybe the Eagles playing somebody, or the Niners, or I'm sure the Ravens, or you could name plenty of teams, but not one game really sticks out. And last night was one that, if you're a Raven fan, and you live in the Baltimore area, or the 16 of you outside of Baltimore that roots for the Ravens, I'm sure you're probably thinking that there's no way this team, under that head coach, is going to be able to get to a Super Bowl, let alone play in one, because that was one where you have to not only scratch your head, but you also have to rub your eyes and even slap your face, because there was no way on God's green earth that the Baltimore Ravens had any business losing that game last night. And that's all there is to it. And I get it, that's easy for me as a Steeler fan to come out and knock the Ravens or their coach or whatever it may be. But if you watch that game, and mind you, I was at my in-laws last night having a meal prior to the game and then watching it. And at 40-25, when Derrick Henry again, I mean, how many times do you see him gouge that Bill defense? You think to yourself, that's it. This game is over. I understand it's about, 9+ minutes to go, but this is a wrap. The Bills defense was Swiss cheese the whole night, and the Ravens had their way with that defense to the point where I thought the game was over. So by the time I got home and I saw that the score was 40-38, I couldn't believe it. My eyes popped out of my head. But as I detail what had transpired there last night, these are the two things that are glaring in my eyes, not only just for the Ravens, but also for the Bills. But for the Ravens, the one thing that they absolutely positively must need, and we know their offense is lethal. Granted that Zay Flowers got a lot of the receiving yards last night and the receptions. Now, Lamar Jackson was I believe 14 for 19. Obviously was stellar on the ground and in the air. But here's the problem with this Raven offense at times. Twofold. One, they concentrate so much on one guy that it's kind of easy to figure out where they're going to go. Now, generally, it's usually Mark Andrews as the security blanket for one Lamar Jackson. But in this particular case, it was Zay Flowers. And yes, besides Derrick Henry rushing the ball and having just chunks throughout the course of the evening and having his way with that defense until the most pivotal point of the game. But for Todd Monken and even for John Harbaugh, this goes to them. This offensive coordinator that a lot of people thought coming in there, now with his third straight year, and people thinking, oh, this offense is going to be prolific and high-powered, and it certainly was for 3.5 quarters. But then what happened in those final 3 possessions? They went 3 and out, they got the fumble, and then another 3 and out. And here it is, a team that literally was just ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. literally had their way, marching up and down the field the whole night. And then all of a sudden they got close to the vest and conservative. And this is what would scare you if you're a Raven fan, especially when you get deep into the season and then January and beyond. We saw this in the AFC Championship game where John Harbaugh looked like a deer in headlights, like if he never coached an NFL game in his life. And that's why he is overrated. Is he a good coach? Yes, he is. But he does not belong in the upper echelon. And I understand it's just a handful. And I'm not even going to put Mike Tomlin up there, despite the fact of his not having a season under 500 under his belt. But what has he done for the Steeler fan lately as far as playoff wins? A big, fat, giant donut. So just because you may say, oh, there goes JAYREELZ, he's going to pound on Harbaugh and praise Mike Tomlin. No, I'm not going to do that because Tomlin's in that same boat with Harbaugh right now. Because despite the fact that they both won Super Bowls and another Super Bowl appearance for Tomlin, that might as well have been 100 years ago. And the same for Harbaugh winning that Super Bowl back when Joe Flacco was a quarterback who's still in the league today. So for Harbaugh, I don't know what went on, especially when I look at that 3rd and 7, where after the fumble at 40 to 32, and when Henry fumbled that ball, it put a big-time blemish on his night. Because despite the fact that he was dominant, but coughing up the ball there, and Ed Oliver had a monster game, and that was it, because then the Bills punched it into the end zone. Now they missed the 2-point conversion. Now I have to get to Sean McDermott. Because even though I'm all over the map here with the Ravens and how they are unable to secure a game like this, again, you're up 15 points with 4 minutes to go, and you gagged. But why did Sean McDermott go for 2 at 34-25? Could somebody explain that to me? They get the touchdown there, and then inexplicably. Now, the first time around, I get it because of the penalty. They moved it up to the 1-yard line. You went for 2. All right, that was at 27-19. They wanted to go up, or they wanted to be trailing 27-21. So if they did get a touchdown, they would be able to take the lead on an extra point. All right, fine. I'm not going to kill you for that. But you're already down 9 points. Kick the extra point to make it a 1-score game. What are you doing? Trying to get 2 there, and as it was, thankfully, I didn't hurt him in the long run, but that was a boneheaded move by McDermott, which he's been known to make boneheaded moves in the past. But no, going back to the Ravens. So now, at 40 to 32, between the offensive coordinator and the head coach, like I said, but then what happened there on 3rd and 7? I understand that the Bills are trying to burn their timeouts, and now it's 3rd and long. I get it, Lamar Jackson's not going to do this. He's a very humble guy, as prolific and dynamic as he is on that field. But he should have told not only his coach, but also the coordinator, 3rd and 7, we're either going to do a naked bootleg or just give me the quarterback draw. I'm getting this first down and we're going home. And that's it. What does he do? He throws a 5-yard pass to DeAndre Hopkins, and that was it. 4th and 2, they punt the ball, and then they march on down the field, and they kick a game-winning field goal. Matt Prater, and that's it. That's all she wrote as time expired. And even with Jackson pushing the fan, he did apologize. He said that he let the emotions get the best of him, and fans have no right, unless they're going to do the Lambeau leap, where they're going to pat the players on the helmet or the shoulder pads. The fans have no right trying to touch a player while they're on the, maybe not in that case in the playing field, but they're obviously in their territory, so fans have no right to do that. And what Jackson did was wrong, but at least he apologized for it and realized that the moment he got swept up in that. But here's the thing, if you're a Raven fan, you have to be sick to your stomach knowing that you had a 15-point lead and you just blew it. And to me, that falls on your coach and your coordinator. And I don't want to hear, oh, well, all the starters have come back. Oh, this team is now prime. And I'm sure they're still going to have a big year. And I picked them as an over at 11.5. And they're going to win 12, I think, in their sleep. But that is a game that's going to stick to your ribs throughout this whole season. Why? Because you already lose a tiebreaker to Buffalo. So you have to have a better record than Buffalo at the end of the year in order to get any tiebreaker advantage when it comes to January. And that is one that there is no way. It's inexplicable how they blew that game. Unbelievable. So that is maybe an overreaction to the standpoint of the Ravens. But the overreaction is Buffalo. Are they the class of the AFC? And everybody's talking about it this morning. How I saw a clip, I think Adam Schefter says, the road to the Super Bowl goes to Buffalo. Are we in week 12 or even halfway through the season? We are not. How is he going to all of a sudden think that the road goes to Buffalo? I mean, are we serious? I can't believe some of the things that these people say coming out of their mouths. And I get it, ratings or just to get that viral content that's out there. But that is just asinine, Adam Schefter. I mean, what are you talking about? And I think it was Schefter. If I'm wrong, let me see. I'm going to pull this up real quick because I almost fell out of my chair when I read that this morning. And there's so many other comments. I mean, Stephen A. coming out saying that, I have issues with the Steelers come postseason time. Can we get out of this summer first before I even talk about the playoffs? Listen, I'm already getting started here, but I digress for a moment. And I want to make sure it was Schefter who said that this morning, which, again, yeah, it was. The road to the Super Bowl will go through Buffalo. Can we put a timeout on that, please? You can't make this stuff up. It is just deplorable how these people just all of a sudden come out with these comments and think that, hey, this is an automatic, or, Buffalo's the best team. That's why I kid with the overreactions. And maybe that was stated in an overreaction comment, but come on. I wouldn't put it past him if Schefter is actually thinking that. But then the other overreaction as of yesterday, which was the second best game of the day, is Aaron Rodgers now back to 2014, where he got the little fountain of youth. Maybe he went to another dark cave this offseason or right before the season began, because yesterday, against a good Jet defense, not a great Jet defense, he put up 22 for 30, 4 touchdowns, and they did get a big break when they got the fumble recovery at 26-24, and then he punched it into the end zone with Calvin Austin III. And granted that they got the lucky bounce, or bounces, on that last drive, 32-31, and where it bounced off 4 different times before DK Metcalf was able to corral it. And then it took a 61-yard field goal. Think about that. 61 with a little over a minute to go from Chris Boswell to win the game. And the Steeler offense certainly showed up yesterday. They had their moments where the Jets were able to get after Aaron Rodgers, but he stood cool, calm, collected, had a big performance there offensively, and who knows, could this be a big year for Aaron Rodgers? It's one game, not going to get crazy. Now, the Steeler defense, they need to wake up. And I get it that they have not been cohesive with the whole training camp and not having the starters play. And Cam Hayward got his extension, or really got a $3 million raise this year. So he suited up, played there yesterday. But if you're a Steeler fan, you cannot like what you saw defensively. Breece Hall carving them up left and right. Justin Fields had a very good game. And I understand that last play where he threw it to Garrett Wilson, where Jalen Ramsey hit him. There looked like there was some daylight where he could have gone for it, but there were 2 guys that were there, so he had to get rid of the ball. And Wilson got popped there, and it was right at the marker too, so it would have been close. But the Steelers were able to get out of Dodge with a win. And listen, that would have been an embarrassing loss considering what the Jet offense was able to do throughout the course of the day, and they made no adjustments. They just let Justin Fields bootleg into the end zone on 4th and goal. And I understand Aaron Glenn going for it there for 2, not only in that moment at 32-31, but even early in the game where I believe the score was, there was so many different, was it 15-10 or 10-9? Well, they had a situation where there was a penalty and they went for 2 and they didn't get it. And I didn't have a problem with that. But for the Steelers, a lot of people are going to think, Aaron Rodgers, could this be a big-time year? Could the Steelers go deep? Not only just in a very competitive division, but even in the postseason, as Stephen A. Smith brought up, which is a joke. But again, got to pump the brakes on that. And then, of course, the Chiefs there Friday night, just to reel it back a couple of days before that. Everybody's thinking, is this the beginning of the end for the Chiefs? Now, I got to give it up for Justin Herbert. He had probably his best game of his career, was very efficient in the air, and even got the big third down. I was 3rd and 14. Where he ran right and he ran past. He was looking as nimble as Lamar Jackson. Got the first down in Sao Paulo, and that's all she wrote, as the Chargers played very well. Patrick Mahomes was good, but not great. Travis Kelce knocks out his own player, Xavier Worthy, on the first play. I believe it was not the first play, definitely the first possession, where I believe he has a dislocated shoulder. Who knows if he's going to be available against a Philly team that is going to be game. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of revenge, but the Chiefs could actually go 0-2. So, like I mentioned, the beginning of the end, the overreactions, week 1. And we could go through all these games and all these scenarios, etc., where I'm sure there are a lot of people that are thinking, we're on our way to the Super Bowl, or we're going to be 0-17. Then you had the Eagles, speaking of which, did not have an overly impressive game. Dallas was actually game. And if it wasn't for the fumble by Miles Sanders helping out his own team there late in the third quarter where they were in the red zone at 24-20, and then the CeeDee Lamb drops. The second one could have caught. The first one he should have caught, and that would have set them up beautifully. They're deep in Eagle territory, but that didn't happen. And the Cowboys, who played very well, and we know about the whole Micah Parsons getting traded the week before and how this team was going to respond. And who knows, maybe they're going to be better than what we actually thought. And the Eagles, Saquon Barkley wasn't impressive. You only had one catch there by A.J. Brown. And a lot of plays there by Jalen Hurts, who did it more so with his legs than his arm. And they were able to survive that week 1 opener there to raise the curtain on the season on Thursday night. And then yesterday, to go through it, Las Vegas, I'm sure everybody's jumping for joy there out in the desert where the Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, who threw for 362 yards. And I thought, again, one game, maybe an overreaction on my part, but I saw the Patriots number over under total number, and I picked them as an under at 8.5. I thought that was way too high. And Drake May was not that good yesterday. Obviously, he overthrew guys, certainly not piggybacking from what he did at the tail end of last year. And the Raiders get a win as they go home to play the Chargers, which will be a very interesting early season matchup with those two teams who are currently undefeated. So, got to give it up for what Vegas did. And Arizona hung on against New Orleans. Now, a lot of people think New Orleans is going to be the team that will probably end up being the worst this year. But Arizona was game also, and they hung in there on the road, knowing that they're going to play in a very competitive NFC West. And speaking of which, San Francisco. I know a lot of people are going to think, oh, maybe this is the Niners where they take off. Now, George Kittle, we got to see about this hamstring. But they got a late touchdown there where Brock Purdy, with about a little bit over a minute to go, and with Sam Darnold marching down the field and looking like he was going to punch it into the end zone, and Seattle will get off to a 1-0, and not only that, but also in the division, beating San Francisco, who they never beat, fumbles there late, coughs it up, and the Niners recover, and they get off to the good side there of the win column, 1-0, where Seattle now has to lick their wounds and wonder what had transpired and what happened there down the stretch as they're 0-1. Denver, who I picked in my knockout pool. Hey, I survive. I usually get bounced week 1. But Denver, their defense was top-notch. Cam Ward did not play well, but did make some plays. And Tennessee's defense certainly stepped up. Bro Nix did not have a good game, but Denver did just enough as they won 20-12 as they go back to the drawing board to see what went wrong there. I know a lot of people picking Denver as the trendy pick. Not only is it over, but maybe getting to an AFC Championship game from what I saw here over the weekend. All right, can I pump the brakes on that? I understand it's Sean Payton, quarterback whisperer, Bo Nix, but way too early to even think that the Broncos are going to have a deep run. And if it's going to happen, it's going to be predicated on their defense. Then you had the Giants. Talk about going back to the drawing board. Now, of course, all the chance is going to be for Jackson Dart. You're going to have to wait another week because the Giants are going to go to Dallas this week. But you know that the media is going to wonder. And even with Brian Daboll yesterday, saying that, hey, this isn't Russell Wilson's fault. That's not his problem, blah, blah, blah. But when asked who's going to start week 2, oh, we're going to evaluate that. Well, you already know that it's up in the air on whether or not Wilson's going to start week 2. I think he's going to get the start. Now, he did not play well yesterday. He was 17 for 37, 168 yards. Didn't throw an interception, but obviously didn't get in the end zone. And the Giants, and their defense didn't play well. And even the Commanders, they did not play as crisp, did not have that good game. But at the same time, good teams find a way to win these games, even if it is against an inferior Giant team. And the Commanders win their first game yesterday in the nation's capital. Jacksonville, again, not overly impressive against Carolina. They had that delay with the Lightning, but they got off to a good start with the new coach there, Liam Cohen, as well as Trevor Lawrence, who Jacksonville needs to get off to a good start. And I still picked them as a disappointment because I still need to see more, although a weak schedule, etc. But Jacksonville, with a win down there in northern Florida, to get themselves off to a good start. And then another game. Surprised I didn't touch on this earlier, but I kind of want to cut through the dead weight and the fat at some of these games. And yeah, I see Miami and Indianapolis. Oof, that was one that you just avert your eyes if you're a Dolphin fan. But Detroit and Green Bay. I understand during the NFL preview, which I had on my live stream, it's still on my YouTube channel. Definitely check it out. Although they have a tough schedule, but I think the Lions are still going to have a big year. Now, big is not going to be 15-2. To think they already lost half of the games that they did last year, and they're already after 1 week. But to me, that game was more about the Packers. As I've said a million times over, Jordan Love has not been able to beat a big team. And my bad, hand raised high in the air. When I talked about that offensive line by the Lions, I think of Penei Sewell. I forgot that Frank Ragnow retired, and there's been some turnover there. So their offensive line, as you saw that yesterday, was not cohesive in the least. Micah Parsons did get a sack, so I'm sure everybody in Green Bay rejoiced. And the Packers dominated. I know you look at the score, 27-13, were the Lions in the game? They were not. Now, I don't know if you want to chalk that up to them not playing in the preseason or them just trying to shake the rust off. Who knows? But that certainly was a very uninspiring performance there by the Lion team, who I'm sure they'll rally the troops. Remember, no coordinators there. Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are now off to greener pastures in the NFL coaching ranks, head coaching ranks, that is. So, very disappointing for Detroit. Good for Green Bay. But besides that, I wouldn't look any deeper into Detroit's woes. But I'm sure a lot of people thinking, oh, Detroit, this is going to be their demise as far as a week one overreaction. And the same can be said in Houston, where the Rams defensively played well. Matthew Stafford, over 60,000 yards for his career. Congratulations to him. And it was a very boring game when you think about it. The offense of the Texans were unable to get on track. And for the Rams, with the question mark surrounding their quarterback, as far as having that back injury, listen, was he great in the game? Threw for 245 yards. But at the same time, however you get a win, you get a win. You don't throw these wins back in the NFL by any means and give it up to the Rams, and they have a very good defense, as you know. So let's see after week one if they're able to piggyback off of that coming into next week. And I won't look at the schedule. That I'll wait till Thursday's podcast as we get a big overview for week two. But you have the Rams winning that game in a low scorer against the Texans. And yeah, might as well get over this game already. Miami, overreaction. They look like they're going to have a long year. Tua was not good in the game. Daniel Jones actually had a very good game. Indianapolis came out flying, and the Dolphins didn't know what hit them. Now, the Dolphins play better at home, and they have the Patriots coming in this week. That I do know. But, yeah, that was one where you just flush the tape in the toilet, you start over, and if you're Mike McDaniel, is the seat getting warm there as far as your head coaching job? Still too early to tell, but a couple more stinkers like this, and the seat will get hot quick, fast, in a hurry. So I have to keep that in mind. And let's see, did I cover all of them? Cincinnati and Cleveland. Cincinnati, their defense actually showed up. Now, Cleveland had a shot to take the lead there late. They missed a field goal. They also missed an extra point. So that was a big-time blemish on the Brown team that obviously are going to have a hard way trying to find wins throughout the course of this regular season. But the Bengals, listen, you take this win, just like I said a second ago, and you run. Because we know that the Bengals have gotten off the slow starts over the last few years, so I understand it wasn't pretty, and you're not going to get any style points, but you know what? You take it and run with it to next week, and away you go as the Bengals were able to survive there in Cleveland. And then lastly, the Falcons, they were hanging tight there with the Buccaneers. They got off to a 10-0 start. And remember, Atlanta swept Tampa last year in the season series and did not make it to the postseason. But Baker Mayfield, I understand maybe not big on the yardage and the percentage as far as his completions go, but did throw for 3 touchdowns. Michael Penix Jr. did put up good numbers, but certainly were unable to get the game-time field goal late there by the kicker Younghoe Koo. And what can you say? A situation where the Falcons let another one slip away, similar to what we saw there last year when they let the NFC South slip away. And right now they're in an 0-1 hole, not only in their record, but against Tampa, which you would think they're going to be the favorites to win the NFC South. So for the Falcons, yeah, that was a tough loss for them. And Tampa continues to win and continues to play well in a division that obviously has been theirs here over the last couple of years. And that pretty much does it there for week one. And you have the game tonight. I would say maybe the Bears. I don't know, with J.J. McCarthy. I haven't seen him play. The last time I actually saw him play was the championship game against Washington. So that's all you need to know there. But who knows if the hostile environment, division game on the road, I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but I'll take Chicago only because Caleb Williams has a little bit more seasoning than J.J. McCarthy. Ben Johnson, we got to wait and see with his clock management, etc. But I do like the Bears tonight to win there to close out week number 1. And besides that, I think that's pretty much it. I just want to make sure. I know you had a couple of signings there. I talked about Cam Hayward agreeing to rework his contract, as you know, get a $3 million raise. Jameson Williams gets a 3-year extension worth $83 million. And even though he did play in the game, Christian McCaffrey, he was on the injury report on Thursday with a calf issue. A lot of people thought, oh my God, this is last year all over again. But he did play, was respectable, but didn't have a dominant game in the least. And yes, I didn't talk about Jalen Carter spitting on Dak Prescott. I mean, what are you doing, Jalen Carter? I mean, seriously, that was just a terrible job by him to start the game that way where he gets ejected. And I'm sure he's going to get fined for sure, maybe even suspended. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's what you have there with the NFL. Now, I'm going to get to the college football in a second. There isn't much to talk about there. I'm going to put a pause on the gridiron for a second and get in the batter's box to talk some baseball. Because the only couple of things that I have to discuss here. Number one, were there even games played this weekend? I mean, it was so quiet in baseball that you look around and you look at the standings and you see, hey, the teams move up, the teams drop off. Is the AL wildcard race, has that gotten a bit interesting? And you could have slept the entire weekend, or better yet, once I put out the podcast Thursday, and let's say came out, I don't know, 11:30 or so, and you listened to it during your lunch hour from 12 to 1, and let's say your meal was so big and you were so satiated that you actually fell asleep. And the next thing you know, you woke up and you're saying to yourself, what day is it? What time is it? Oh my God, it's Monday morning. It's 8:45 a.m. I got to not only get to work, but I got to see what happened in baseball over the weekend. You didn't miss anything. If anything, the one tidbit that would absolutely just blow your mind. Now, the Dodgers, who were in a free fall this week, they got swept in Pittsburgh, lost the game Friday night to the Orioles, and then Saturday night they had Yoshinobu Yamamoto pitching a no-hitter into the ninth inning. He gets the first 2 outs. Then he gives up a solo homer to Jackson Holliday, which spoils the no-hitter. Then gets pulled for Blake Trinan. I believe he gives up a hit, walks 2 guys. Then Tanner Scott comes in, walks in a guy to make it 3-2, and then gives up a base knock, game winner for 2 runs. 4 runs, all after 2 outs in the 9th inning where Yamamoto was pitching a no-hitter. But then yesterday they salvaged the series and got out of Baltimore with a win to stop that bleeding as they try to get to some home cooking right about now. And the Dodgers, they are either just hanging by a thread, or as I said a couple of weeks ago, maybe as early as last week, they are just waiting for October 1st to come. Whether that be they get a bye, which right now it's not looking that way, or they'll host in the wild card round, the first round, in all likelihood, against the Mets. More on them in a second. But for the Dodgers to just be in this late season slumber where they can't seem to get out of their own way, and the Padres, who are nipping at the heels in the division, are just 1 game behind them in the NL West, but they found a way to win that game yesterday after the heartbreak they suffered the night before. So kudos to the Dodgers for gutting that one out, but still a lot of question marks. And how I put it, they're a Jekyll and Hyde team. You almost have to ask yourself which team is going to show up in October. Is it going to be the team that last year made their way to a World Series and were down 2-1 to the San Diego Padres in a wild card round? Or are they going to be that team, certainly not that they were 2 years ago when they were dominant and then played the Diamondbacks in the divisional series and they got just waxed, annihilated, where the Diamondbacks went in there and swept them 3 straight, starting off with the 1/3 of an inning by Kershaw where he gave up 6 runs in game 1. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. They're either going to start off hot and the next thing you know they're on a roll, or they may bow out in the wild card round. Who knows? But now you still have 19 games for a lot of teams, and we're less than 3 weeks away from the end of the regular season. So you got that going. And then when you look at the standings in the National League, and I'll do an overview on that in a second, the Mets were this close to getting swept there in Cincinnati. And even though the Reds took 2 out of 3 and they gained the game in the wild card, but now they got 2 teams ahead of them that they have to look up and even over if they want to get past the Mets. But the Mets day on Friday night, talk about a cat that had 9 lives. I mean, between the balls that were close to being fair that were foul, a bases loaded, no out situation in the 9th inning, and the 2 scenarios where one in the 8th inning where there was a runner on first and it was a shot that was this close to being a home run that would have had the Reds taken the lead, but that was foul. And then you had a ball that was hit down the line in the 9th inning that was foul too, that would have tied the game. And even with Diaz, with his best Houdini act, Bases loaded, nobody out. He gives up a hit and then 2 walks, and he strikes out 2 guys, and then he gets a ground out to second where he actually covered on a play that Luis Angel Acuna made, which was excellent. Got him out at first. The Mets survived. I don't even know how to this very second. But they blew the next 2 games where Jonathan was not good. He gave up gopher balls left and right. And then Brandon Sproat, the other prized prospect, pitching prospect that is, through 5 innings yesterday, walked nobody, gave up a run. Excuse me, I take that back. Through 5 innings, gave up 4 walks, but no hits. Did give up a run, but then in the 6th inning, it all fell apart, where Sproat looked very effective, but was unable to get out alive as the Mets lose the rubber match there yesterday, there at the Great American Ballpark. And then even with teams like the Giants, we got some handy help by the St. Louis Cardinals yesterday, because if not, they would have been that much closer in the wild card standings. And how it looks right now, you have the Mets now 2 games behind the Padres for the 5th spot, and the Cubs have a 3-game lead over the Padres. So with the Mets holding firm on that final spot, where the Giants, the Reds 4 back, and the Diamondbacks and Cardinals are 4.5 back. Now again, 4 is a big deficit with 19 to go. And dare I even say, we've seen Met teams blow 7-game leads with less games to play. So hopefully history does not repeat itself. But that's what you have there in the National League. And in the American League, like I mentioned, still the same. Yankees, who won 2 out of 3 this weekend over the Blue Jays. And they are currently a game and a half or 2 in the loss over the Red Sox, where the Mariners have the final spot in the American League wildcard race. And let me just take a look here. Now, they're actually 3.5 ahead. Now, they have a game in hand. Oh, no. Am I doing my math correctly? The Red Sox have a 3.5 game lead over the Mariners, but they're 1 in the loss. And the Mariners have a 3-game in-hand advantage. So they got to make up these 3 games. So keep that in mind here, because the Mariners could even overtake the Red Sox for 2nd place. And then after that, you have the Rangers, who are now 1.5 back, 2 in the loss behind Seattle. Kansas City 2 back. Then Cleveland 2.5. Then you have Tampa 4 back, and that's it. And that was pretty much what it was dating back Thursday. So you didn't miss much if you're wondering who was able to inch closer to the wild card, or even the division races. But as it was, nothing has changed. So now we're going to have to wait and see what's going to take place this week here in both leagues, which I'll get to in a minute. But divisions are still the same, as you know. Well, even though the Yankees gained a game, but they're 2 up. We know what's happening in both the AL and NL Central. I told you what's happening in the NL West. NL East is still the same. Mets go to Philadelphia to start a 4-game series tonight, but I'm not even thinking or banking that they could sweep or come close to that in order for them to get themselves back in the divisional race. To me, that is just a far cry, and you talk about being ultra optimistic. Not this guy. But for the rest of the standings, let me see here. As I pull that up, Brewers. Then you have the Mariners, who are 2.5 back, 2 in a loss behind the Astros. That pretty much covers it. And then as far as your schedule goes for the week, you know about Mets, Philly, Cleveland, Kansas City. I think that's a 4-game series. I'll take a look at that. Let's see what else you have. Cubs in Atlanta, Milwaukee at Texas, Cincinnati at San Diego, St. Louis at Seattle, interesting series, Arizona at San Francisco. That could be a loser leaves town match. Boston at Athletics, Colorado at the Dodgers. And then tomorrow, the rest of the series picks up. Tigers in New York to play the Yankees. That's a good series. Houston at Toronto, another very good series. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, nobody cares. Now, let me see. So, if Kansas City at Cleveland's a 4-game series, that could be another loser leaves town match. Whomever loses 3 out of 4, they could put themselves in a position where they are bye-bye for the 2025 season. And then there's one sad note in baseball. Davey Johnson, Met manager, 86 World Championship team, got to the Mets in 84, fired in 1990. And Davey, listen, he brought but he brought us Met fans a championship when they did it the right way. Obviously in 84, after bringing in Keith Hernandez the prior year, Darryl Strawberry, first full year, Dwight Gooden's rookie year, and the Met Magic, that was the beginning. And then in 85, they came close, winning 98 games. Second place in the NL East, fell short to the Cardinals. And then in 86, during spring training, he said, we're going to dominate this year, laid it for everybody, and I'm saying that nicely. And what happens? The Mets dominated. Now, they just got by the Astros in the NLCS. They didn't have to face Mike Scott in Game 7, which would have been probably lethal. And then we all know what happened in 86, as they were this close from losing that series when they were down 3-2 to the Red Sox at home. But for Davey, who teams he managed brought a lot of joy, a lot of relief, also some pain too, 84 in particular, 85 as well, 88 Dodgers, do I even need to uncover that? 89 to the Cubs in that race, and then 90 with how things went down there, and I didn't even think he finished the season that year. But Davey, to you, your family, the Mets, Major League Baseball, my condolences, thoughts, prayers to your family, and wherever you are, may you rest in peace as you transition at the age of 82. All right, now let me get to the college football, as we'll pop that up right here as I put back on the helmet and shoulder pads. Real quick to get into, you had two big-time upsets. Mississippi State scoring a TD in the final minute to beat number 12 Arizona State. And then South Florida, who's been a very good team over the years, they beat Florida in the swamp with a field goal at the buzzer by Nico Gramatica. And if you're wondering, wait, Gramatica? That's a very popular last name. Yes, because he's actually the son of Martin Gramatica, and I believe would be the nephew of Bill Gramatica. So great job by him as they were able to beat the Florida Gators, and we'll see what's going to happen with South Florida in the weeks to come. But the other big games of note, you had Oregon, who destroyed Okie State, and the banter back and forth between Mike Gundy, the coach of the Cowboys, and the coach of the Ducks, being Dan Lanning. And for Lanning, he gets the last laugh, 69-3. I know Gundy had made some comments about NIL money and who's going to procure the best players once you get closer to and obviously into the regular season. So he swatted that with a 69-3 effort. So congratulations to the Ducks. And then you had the scenario where John Mateer, the quarterback of the Oklahoma Sooners, just ran roughshod over the Michigan defense and had a big game on the ground, and not only running the ball, what do they have? 74 yards on the ground, threw 270, and they won rather comfortably 24-13. So that's a big win for a Sooner team that's trying to get their sea legs, trying to get back toward the top of the rankings there, not just this year, but years on down the road. So that's a big win there for the Oklahoma Sooners. And Michigan, again, after a week one win, now it's let's see what we can do next as we try to get our season on the tracks and move forward. And yes, got to talk about Bill Belichick. He gets his first win in college, beating Charlotte 20-3. No big whoop because of the opponent, but he does have his win, so congratulations to him. And that is it. I'll go through the schedule there on Thursday's podcast as we'll dissect that during our segment here at that time then. Now, let me turn my attention to as I'm scrolling here. All right. Turn my attention to what's happening on the tennis court as I lace up the tennis shoes and break out the racket. And all you got to say is the brilliance of Carlos Alcaraz shined again at Flushing Meadow, where he had just an epic performance throughout. Didn't drop a set through the first 6 matches, and on match 7, although dropped a second set, but exacted revenge on Jannik Sinner. This was the trio of Grand Slam finals that the two have faced off against one another, where at the French Open, you had Alcaraz win that one. You had Sinner win at Wimbledon, and then Alcaraz getting the medal and, or I should say, getting the trophy, the U.S. Open title. That's his 6th Grand Slam, his 2nd U.S. Open. The only tournament he has not won is the Australian Open, and he did it in very convincing fashion. 4 sets, and Sinner did not have an answer for what Alcaraz had in his tool shed, and all you could do is just tip your cap. And I know that Sinner was gracious in defeat in the press game and even beyond that in the locker room, so I got to give it up for him. I'm not a fan of his play. Here he is. He's trailing in the match in the 4th round, and he's doing this. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. Like, he's doing these arm punches like, oh, yeah, I'm this close. So, oh, yeah. I mean, what are we doing? That's like scoring a touchdown at 27-3 in the 4th quarter trailing, and you're going to do backflips and spike the ball. So, Sinner, listen, he's going to be heard from. We know that these are by far the top 2 tennis players on the tour. And even with Novak Djokovic losing to Alcaraz there on Friday, and he just ran out of gas. He cannot hang with these young bucks. And you could just see it. It was evident on his face, especially during that 3rd set. And Djokovic, listen, Father Time has caught up to him. To go against these guys with this amount of talent is going to be very daunting. That's not to say he's never going to win again or he's never going to win a tournament. Who knows? The cookie's going to have to crumble in a certain way where if he gets in and happens to be standing there at a semifinal or final, maybe even against a guy who we all think is beneath, because if he's going to go up against Sinner or Alcaraz, he's going to lose. But if he goes up against a Taylor Fritz or a Daniil Medvedev, who obviously got ousted in the 1st round there a couple of weeks ago, that's the only way he's going to win. And I think even to Djokovic's admission, let me enunciate here, to where he said that, I can't keep up with these guys, and I'm paraphrasing. These guys are 22, 23, 24 years of age, and they're going to run circles around Djokovic. Yeah, he may have the experience, the know-how, and to try to conserve himself, but there is no way that he's going to be able to match physicality, that he's going to be able to match ability. Djokovic right now in his career, he went from throwing 98 his entire life, and now he's got to throw to pitch the spots. He's going to have to be 91 on the black. He's going to have to throw a lot of junk and slop at you. Not to say that that's how his play is, but in order for him to win, that's what's going to happen. Because if he's going to go up against somebody that just has the goods and then some, it's going to be a long afternoon, as you saw there a couple of days ago. And then you also have, on the women's side, very competitive, where you had Amanda Anisimova top Naomi Osaka in 3 thrilling sets. You had the 2 tiebreak sets where Naomi won the 1st set, but that 2nd set was even just as epic as Anisimova won 7-5. And then what could you say? Even Osaka admitted, I gave it my all. I left it all out there. And rightfully so, as Anisimova went on to face Sabalenka, and Sabalenka beat Jessica Pegula, who can't seem to get over the hump in her right. And that was also a very good matchup. Not as classic as the previous one, but still. And then during the final between Sabalenka and the number 1 ranked women's player in the world in Aryna Sabalenka, I mean, all she did was just, I'm not going to say she dominated, but she played exceptionally well. And give it up to her. She actually didn't flinch in that 3rd set. She was down 5-2, I believe. Maybe it was 5-3. And then Anisimova came back. She won the next 3 games. And we all know Sabalenka could get in her skull, she could get in her head, and the snake starts swirling, and the next thing you know, she's going to drop a set and then drop the final set, and that's it. As you saw there at the French losing to Coco Gauff, and even at Wimbledon when she lost to Anisimova. But this was a big-time revenge match for Sabalenka, and she showed that. Down 6-5 in the 2nd set, she came back and tied it, and then dominated in the extra frame to where at one point she was up 6-1 before winning 7-3. So then Sabalenka advances, and then she advances to win a championship as she beat Amanda Anisimova. And that is it for your tennis circuit as far as the Grand Slams go for 2025. And all I can say is this. Kudos to Sabalenka. She had a rough summer. Again, lost a final at Wimbledon, and she lost in the semis, or lost I'm all over the map here, people. My apologies. Lost in the finals at the French, lost in the semis at Wimbledon, and was able to win here. Kudos to her. And then for Alcaraz, they split he gets the rubber match where they split French and Wimbledon, where Carlos won the tournament at Roland Garros. Sinner won at the Old England Club. And then here at Flushing Meadow, it was all Alcaraz. So congratulations to him as he secures his 6th champion, and he needs to win the Australian to get the career slam, which let's see if he gets to do so come January. So that is it for the tennis. I'll wrap it up here, people. A sad passing in the NHL as I lace up my skates. Now, if you were to look at Mount Rushmore for goaltenders, and you know 2 right off the bat are going to be Patrick Roy and Martin Brodeur. Now, where do you put the other 2? Terry Sawchuk, you think would have to be up there. And he's going back to the 50s. I got a lot of people like, Terry who? Yes, Terry Sawchuk, people. He was a guy that was arguably, and I understand, with the wins that have amassed in Brodeur's career, and Patrick Roy, for all his brilliance, mostly with Montreal, but obviously did get to win a cup there in Colorado. But for a guy like Terry Sawchuk, who played a million years ago, now I understand you got to go way back to when he played, more so in the 50s on, up until 1970. But most notably, playing for the Red Wings, as you know, or for those who don't know, but he actually played for the Bruins, played for Toronto. Now you got to remember, those are the original 6 teams until expansion came in. Then he did play with the Kings for a bit, and closed out his career in his final year with the Rangers. But Sawchuk is a guy that will take a backseat to nobody all time as far as his career goes. But for Ken Dryden, Montreal Canadiens, won 6 Stanley Cups. How many Vezina trophies did he win? I mean, he won a ton of those. Won a Conn Smythe trophy. In fact, won the Vezina 5 times. Was a Rookie of the Year. Playoff MVP in 71. I mean, the guy just had a remarkable career. And sadly, he died at the age of 78 on Friday due to cancer. And when you think about those Canadian teams of that era, when you think of Yvon Cormier, when you think of Larry Robinson, Guy Lafleur, who passed away a few years ago, and now Ken Dryden. Yeah, that was the last great dynasty of the Canadiens, because from the time they won in the 78-79 season, they did not win another cup until you got to 86, which was fine 7 years later. And then they did win a cup in 93, and it has been a wasteland there since. But the great Canadian teams of the 70s, some are still around, but some are starting to depart. And for Dryden, thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to his family, the Canadiens, the NHL, as I'm sure they're going to have a commemorative patch for him, and just a sad state of affairs there for Dryden to transition there at the age of 78, as my dog is now barking and going crazy there right before I wrap up. Now, a couple of quick notes. Keep it locked here on the YouTube channel. I'll have my Wednesday live stream, which I'm going to have some news and notes regarding the podcast and regarding some more live streams. But I'm talking about live streams while watching games this coming weekend. So you want to keep close to that dial and watch there. And then, of course, you have another podcast coming Thursday. I also have my podcast pregame, which you want to check out this morning. I had a passionate talk about the Ravens, similar to what you heard earlier. But I got a lot more than I even unpack when it comes to guys like myself. And I'm sure you probably saw Ryan Clark going at him with Peter Schrager. The whole, the non-players out there that don't need to talk, that type of thing. So you'll get my 2 cents on that. And just a little podcast preview of what you get to see every Monday and Thursday before I record the podcast. So you definitely want to check that out on the YouTube channel. But besides that, as I go through it, I know you had the NBA Hall of Fame, Carmelo, Dwight Howard, who would have been a Hall of Fame in my eyes, but I get it. Early part of his career, he was dominant, as well as a few others who are able to be inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. And WNBA, the season concludes this week, but I'll talk more WNBA on Thursday. Caitlin Clark to miss the rest of the year. So there's that as well. But besides that, people, that will be it. That is a wrap for the podcast. And as one last thing, let me just double check. No, that's it. I made sure I got my I's dotted and T's crossed. That'll do it. Another episode in the books. Can I say it one more time, people? Another episode in the books. Let me say it a little bit slower so I can enunciate here and not sound like I'm trying to rush or half falling asleep, whatever it is that may be going on. But thanks for carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in the wonderful world of sports. Maybe I am a little bit tired early morning to prep for the podcast, as well as a 6-mile run on top of a live stream, on top of preparing the dog's food. Now I'm here recording. Now I have to edit, do more house chores, get a lift in. Oh yeah, a lot going on here with yours truly throughout the course of a manic Monday to talk about the old Bangles tune from yesteryear. I believe it was written by Prince, if I'm not mistaken. The dearly beloved and, of course, dearly departed. But with all that being said, one more time, thank you very much. Please, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. A shade over 700 subscribers, trying to get to 1,000, and a little engine that could this podcast, as you know. So please, share with your family, friends, foes, frenemies. Take a screenshot. Even send it to me on social media, whether that's on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ podcast, or on Instagram, just JAYREELZ. On Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just a number. The old-fashioned way, if you want to hit me up with a question, comment, suggestion, you can do so at the JAYREELZpodcast@gmail.com or at the aforementioned social media accounts. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. In the blood, in the DNA, from birth, since birth. Talking sports like no other. Where else are you going to get all this in one podcast? Where else are you going to get this fire, passion, energy, fury? And as long as I'm alive and breathing, that's what I'm sharing, that's what I'm giving. To talk about anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond, I'll be back at the sports desk on Thursday. Blah, blah, blah. Let me just end this here on this note. Back at the sports desk on Thursday. Peace up and God bless to you all. And until next time on the JAYREELZ podcast, on the flip, baby.